Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Conway, VP of Sustainability in the Americas for Interface. Interface is a global flooring manufacturer whose mission is to reverse global warming, if you can believe it. My background is actually as an interior designer. I've been with Interface for 14 years, and for the last four, I've been in sustainability full time. And it's my team's job to activate our mission to reverse global warming outside of Interface. We are very aware that all 3,800 of us globally cannot do this alone. So we are excited to work with other partners of scale to be able to make this vision a reality. A little bit about Climate Take Back. I don't have time to get into all four pillars today, but for today's discussion, two of them are really relevant. And those are Live Zero and Love Carbon that we see at the top here. Live Zero is this constant aim for zero negative impact on the environment. It's programs like LEED, if you're familiar with that, in the building sector. It's programs like zero waste, 100% renewable energy, etc. The thing is that science is telling us that in the next 10 years, we're not going to be able to reverse global warming if we simply live zero, which is that constant reduction year over year. We are also going to have to love carbon. And this is this is my favorite pillar. I love the language because I think it's so interesting. And I'm going to take a second to explain it. So right now, we kind of see carbon as the enemy, something that we want to slash or have a war on or fight. Carbon is actually a building block of life. You and I are made of carbon, plants are made of carbon. We've just taken it from deep within the earth as fossil fuels, and through burning fossil fuels, we've released that carbon into the atmosphere. So what we have to do is both live zero, stop putting so much carbon into the atmosphere, but also look at that waste carbon that's currently in the atmosphere as a resource, something that we can actually pull down, think of the circular economy of carbon, and start using it as a resource to make products, to store them in buildings, etc. So I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. To frame all of this, this is not about polar bears and melting glaciers. This is about us. This is about people having the ability to thrive over time from a health perspective. Something that you may not realize about carbon is that with it being a heat trapping gas and kind of lingering in the blanket that surrounds the earth, that leads to some health issues. The increasing CO2 levels, the rising temperatures, the rising sea levels, etc. We associate all of that with global warming, but the CDC says that climate change is actually the greatest threat to the human health, or to human health, of the 21st century. And that's because all of those events that churn the environment have a real effect on air pollution and things like changes in vector ecology, which are insects that can carry disease, allergens, water quality impacts, all of the stuff that we rely on to stay healthy and thrive. Those all then lead to this outer wheel, things like asthma. So climate change doesn't cause asthma, but it exacerbates asthma symptoms. Things like Lyme disease become more prevalent. We have longer, warmer seasons, and insects have more of an opportunity to breed and therefore infect people. And the list kind of goes on. So I really just want to frame this talk around how this is about us and our ability to create a climate that is fit for life. Something that you may not be aware of in buildings is that, or really any organization, is that the largest carbon impact associated with a building or with an organization actually doesn't have to do with the carbon impact of operating those buildings or organizations, but more to do with the supply chain or specified emissions. So think about every time that you buy something on Amazon, or every time that that concrete is bought for a new building on a campus, or when flooring is bought, which is why I'm here. what we have to do is realize that this large carbon impact associated with all of that stuff needs to be chipped away at over time. So the stuff in our personal life I know can be hard, but at work, if we can really think about what we're buying and the carbon impact associated with that thing by simply using the embodied carbon or the carbon impact of those items as part of the decision-making criteria for all of that stuff, then we can start to chip away at this bottom part of this iceberg example. As we chip away at that, as you see, the entire thing gets smaller, even though this part is under the water and harder to see. That's kind of representative of it not being part of our thinking today. So this information actually lives in environmental product declarations when we're talking about building products. These are very long documents that nobody likes to read, but there's a section that a new tool has been able to extract this information from these PDFs that's called the Global Warming Potential, or GWP, of life cycle stages A1 to A3. And that means cradle to gate, or raw material extraction of whatever that end product is going to be through the manufacturing of that product before it would ship to a job site. So when we extract this information from these kind of long and sciencey documents that are based on life cycle analysis, we're able to compare products within specific material categories. So here's a representative comparison from a category that we participate in called carpet tile, which is carpet in squares or planks, so kind of pieces as opposed to wall like you might have at home. And we can see that in this category, there is a huge difference, actually 10x difference, between one carpet tile and another, which we unfortunately are affectionately, I'm sure, called a commodity in a purchasing scenario. But there can be a big difference in product attributes within categories. So one of the big movements over the last 24 months is to start using embodied carbon, or the carbon impact of materials, as part of the decision-making criteria for projects. We're starting to see projects that compare price, availability, aesthetics, in addition to the embodied carbon as they're making decisions. The even more exciting part about this is not just measuring less bad, which was on this slide, but actually measuring carbon storage. So when I mentioned loving carbon, we can see on this graph here that we can make products that are less bad, but we can also make products that store that excess carbon that's been taken from the atmosphere through the photosynthesis through plants. And then those materials can be used to make products like carpet tile and other types of products. So when we talk about carbon negativity, that is actually a positive thing. It means that more carbon has been stored in the product than released into the atmosphere to make it. So to visualize this, you might take a typical classroom or a typical office and look at a baseline scenario of something that you might have bought before in a bunch of different product categories. And then next time, just make different decisions based on embodied carbon as part of that decision-making process. You'll notice that there's a lot of carbon laying on the table to be saved and stored here. 43% reduction just by paying attention and using that as part of the decision-making. So with that, I'm going to show you an example of an open access tool that's available on the market and available to anyone with internet. So this is called, well, the nonprofit is called Building Transparency. And that really kind of gives you an idea of how can we actually really understand what's locked in that building from a carbon perspective. There's a lot of information on here available at buildingtransparency.org. I just want to mention that this is free. It's a totally free tool. And I'm going to sign in and just show you two quick things. One is how to navigate the tool for a specific product, and then what you can expect as an output for a total project to really understand that project's carbon impact. I'm going to start with the Find and Compare Materials feature, and I'm going to go to Finishes, since we were just talking about carpet. Go to Carpet, and start navigating this category. I'm just going to start with something very simple, not put in too much criteria. I'm going to look at carpet tiles, and I'm going to look at the carpet tiles that are made in the Americas, so that I'm not seeing, EPDs from China or something like that. Sorry about that. Let me just make sure that I selected this. There we go. And then I'm just going to hit search down here. And I'm going to tell you what you're looking at as this populates. It's called a box plot diagram. Don't get too excited about the sciencey nature of that. What you're seeing here is for each category, and this could be carpet tile or it could be anything. What I'm about to describe on the right side is all the same. There's a Carbon Leadership Forum baseline, which is exists within the University of Washington. And a baseline has been set for this product category that is actually pretty high to encourage data transparency, so that no manufacturer is afraid to create that data, that life cycle analysis for their product if it's above the baseline. There's a conservative level here, which basically tells you that the majority of this product category falls in this green area. The conservative high for the majority of the products is here. The achievable low, while still allowing for competition, is down here. The majority of the products fall in here. And then the minimum product is actually has a negative carbon footprint, which is that interface product that I mentioned before. This gives project teams and purchasers an idea of, okay, if the conservative level is represented here, then I really don't need to be buying anything over 1 kilogram of CO2 per square foot, which is what would be represented all the way up here. So this gives some practical guidance for buyers to really understand a category. Below is kind of the rough data. This is probably too much for most of you to look at, but just know that it's like an Excel spreadsheet in that you can sort by lowest to highest. So you'd see that negative carbon footprint product here. You can hit compare and just get an overview of the landscape of manufacturers and where their products might fall. And you can even set a maximum carbon footprint threshold while still allowing for competition if you just kind of scroll. Probably have to go to page 5 to start seeing some additional manufacturers, but you can set and not to exceed and know that you still have lots of options for that competition. So that's a quick overview for materials. Now, when you're looking at the total output, so really the sum of all of those materials that would go into a total project, you can end up with a Sankey diagram of the project here. Let me just explain what you're looking at here. Each product category that's live in the tool, so for this project, the range of materials included glass, gypsum, ceiling panels, light gauge steel, blanket insulation, and carpet. So glass is going to show, or every material category at the top will show a conservative estimate. The target for the project is a 30% reduction. The achievable is right here, what's been specified, and then net zero is at the bottom of the solid area. The point is that with a 30% reduction as the target for the project, each material category is going to show, automatically have that T at the 30% reduction. So some material categories are going to be even lower. Glass achieved a 54% reduction. Gypsum was only a 20% reduction, and that's okay because we made up for it in glass. All of this rolls up to different categories. So the interior construction category, the interior finish category, overall interiors. And then when we look at the output, we see our target was 30% reduction. And as long as we get all of the materials that we specified and chose for this project, we're going to see a 49% reduction from a conservative baseline. And then obviously net zero embodied carbon is down here. So this tool is totally open access and available for anyone to be able to use on projects, either total projects or just to assess individual material categories for anyone who is looking at buildings or specifying or purchasing building materials. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. Hopefully you found this useful and inspiring, and we're excited to be using all of the data that's out there to be making better decisions to have a chance at creating a climate fit for life and reversing global warming. Thanks so much.